Okay, so we're mixing up a batch of CMD pressure lube and some white lead that Keith Rucker sent me. This was very hardened in the container, and what I did is I added linseed oil to it. All the linseed oil had dried out of it, so now I've got kind of a watery mess here, and we're going to try to evaporate some of the linseed oil out. I got an oven set for about 150. I'm just going to use a mason jar. And we're going to mix probably I'm going to try equal amounts of the CMD and the white lead and see how that goes. And then see if we can get it to mix. Because this stuff is like peanut butter. I mean, if you look at this, that stuff just doesn't want to come out. So we've got a pretty big blob of it there. And I'm going to put equal, like I say, I'm going to use equal amounts of the white lead in there with it. And I've got 2 jars to do here. And then what I'm hoping is it's going to do 2 things. It's going to evaporate the linseed oil out and enable me to mix that together, because the way it's sitting right now, that's not going to mix. So I know a mason jar will take 212 degrees because people boil them in water all the time, so it should handle 100.5 no problem. Just going to warm it slightly and mix up another batch here and see if we can get a custom mix for lubing our centers. But this stuff is, I would say that's thicker than peanut butter. That stuff is really heavy. Just for the hell of it, I tried this extreme pressure lube by itself. It's not very persistent. But the white lead by itself is very persistent. But it needs a carrier, and we're going to use the CMD as a carrier. Same thing, 50-50, see how we do. I think we're just horseshoes and hand grenades here, so I think we're good there. Let's get those cooking. And then we'll stir them up. Okay, this is what I'm using as a mixing station. This is just a piece of powder coated aluminum, but it scrapes nice, and I've got a nice edge on my putty knife. And when this came to me, it was just dried up. And it was just a solid ball. I had to dig it all out and essentially chop it up and start getting linseed oil back into it. And the new linseed oil will disintegrate the old linseed oil, but you have to break it up. Essentially, the lead is crushed. It's just a powder. And you need to wet each individual grain, which is difficult to do. So what do you do without some kind of a macerating pump or some way to grind it up? You know, what you're looking for is like a little miniature cement mixer. And I'll show you what I did over here. I'm just gonna grab the tripod and take you over and show you what I got going over here. That's just a pint can with some ball bearings in it, you know, and I didn't want to fill it completely. You need a little air gap in there, and just let it tumble. I run it forward for a few hours and backwards for a few hours, so it's pretty mindless. When you put the lid on, make sure you put the lid up against the chuck, just in case those ball bearings in there decide to beat their way out. So for safety's sake, I put the lid up against the chuck so it cannot possibly come off. All right, but that's how I'm mixing this stuff and getting it back to a paste. It's coming in at a pretty decent paste-like substance. I've already mixed up a bunch of it. But it's, you can see that it's pretty thick in there. Rolling around in there. So it's coming out in a nice paste-like substance with no lumps, you know. That's the big thing, because we're going to end up getting these in syringes and getting them stored for future use. All right, so that's the way I'm mixing up the lead. So let's get the lead out. Okay, they've been in the oven for, I don't know, about 45 minutes. I got the oven set at 100.5, so they really shouldn't be that No, they're not even hot enough that it's going to stop me from handling them. But you can see it's nicely melted, the CMD, and I'm just going to take a little spoon and give them a stir. And wow, it mixes perfectly. Look at that. So a little bit of heat, and it'll mix right up. Now this is 50-50 white lead and CMD. So we're using the CMD as a carrier because it's very thick, and hopefully when that cools it'll solidify again and stiffen right up. I'm going to just let that sit there and cool. And then we've got another one here. Same thing. CMD's mixing in nicely. And you see it darkening up. That CMD was really dark. So, perfect. I don't want any comments about my little spoon. I got a little kitty cat on my spoon. But it's 304 stainless, and it makes a good shop spoon for doing arts and crafts projects like we're doing here today. Alright, so those, that looks like a good mix. I'm pretty happy with that. And hopefully that heat got some of that linseed oil boiled out of there, and that'll help thicken up that lead. But I think the CMD is going to make a wonderful carrier. All right, let's let that solidify. I'll bring you back, and I'd like it to be about the consistency of peanut butter. You know, I'd like it to be right back up there with where the CMD was before. So let's let them sit and see how thick it gets. Okay, well, our batch is cooled, and as you can see, it really expanded and became very aerated. So that was pretty interesting. And all we're going to do to get rid of that, we're here on our powder-coated aluminum again, and we're just going to kind of scoop it out of there, and we're going to use Bondo spreaders. And we're going to try to press some of those air bubbles out and get this back into a good substance. But the consistency is wonderful right now. And this is actually going to be pretty easy to do. We're just going to kind of press it into the table. And if you either work with Bondo, you know, that's how you deal with it right there. That's how you get the air bubbles out. I mean, I guess you could put it in a vacuum chamber and try to degas it. But this, that's going to work fine. It's getting all the air out of it. But what a great consistency. Look at that. It's going to fill up those syringes nicely, and I'm real happy with that final mix. Time will tell how we like it in our centers, but that's the way we're going to work with it right there. All right, so that, you know, it's persistent enough, it doesn't come off. The lead has got, I've used the lead in some centers by itself, and it's amazingly durable to coolant. But it dries out really easily. And with the CMD as a carrier, I think we're going to be just fine. You know, it'll keep it wetted, so for long-term storage, it's not going to dry out. And we can store it in some syringes. Because literally, when you do use it, I'll show you how much you use in one sitting. That much. That's about as much as you'd use on 2 centers. Focus. There. There it is. Anyways, you'd use about that much on 2 centers on a part. So that, lifetime supply. Okay, well, we've consolidated everything. You can see the cleanup, I haven't wiped up or anything. This is all just from scraping. So there's very little waste. And we put it back in the can or jar, and you see where we're at with it. So it was very aerated and had a lot of air bubbles in it. And after we squished all the air bubbles out, that was our final mix there. So it's done. It's ready to pack into syringes. Syringes will be here today. I ordered a 10-pack of nice fat syringes so I can load those up. And they've got what I think is a good plastic kind of a cone tip, like I'm not going to call it a needle, but it'll be good for dispensing, just enough to put a little dot in each center. So that's the end of this. Thanks for watching. It also should be noted that lead goes straight to your bloodstream. It's a heavy metal, and you can absorb it through your skin. You know, back in the 50s and 60s, lead poisoning was really common. Wear gloves. Don't get it on your skin. If you do, just wash it off. Your body is essentially a giant sponge. So it goes straight to your bloodstream, and believe me, it's not good for you. So if you're going to handle lead in any form, even in solid form, wear gloves. Thank you.